Hi guys, welcome to the Classes Corner. I'm Kat, and this week I'm going to continue my series of reviews on the new BBC show Troy, Fall of a City. This episode is episode 2, Conditions, and it's still directed by Owen Harris. This episode deals with the Greeks preparing to go to Troy at Aulis, their initial embassy to Troy, and the Trojans reacting to Helen in their city. So this episode is so full of stuff. It's, there's so much in this episode that I'm not going to be dealing with the episode like I did the first one, where I tried to do it mainly chronologically. I'm going to be dealing with specific chunks of the episode in reference to certain classical texts and my opinions on them. So it's not going to be chronological. If I miss something out about the episode that you guys wanted me to talk about, pop it down in the comments below and I will get to I'll share a few more of my opinions there if you guys want it. But before I get into the main chunk of the episode of my review, I am going to talk about something that people have commented on my video from last week, and a thing which it's a controversial issue for the series in general, which I'll get to that in a minute, which is the casting of black actors in certain roles. Most prominently, people seem to have an issue with the casting of David Gyasi, I think so, if that's his name, in the role of Achilles. And here's my thoughts on that. Straight away, it's a good thing. Classics has sometimes been used by people has used by people in a way which sort of doesn't justify, but they think it justifies their own racist attitudes. People have used classical texts to defend things like the West Atlantic slave trade, colonialism. Some texts are still being used to promote Eurocentric ideals of beauty, which goes way back when. And the thing that some people, these are 1,000-year-old texts which people have used, sometimes like Norse mythology, to sort of bolster their own idea of white supremacy. And classics as a subject needs to address that sometimes people use classics in that way and move from it. Needs to change how people see classics as a subject for old dead white men, and needs to move forward. And I think the fact that they're casting casting certain people, I think that's a good thing, and I think people need to address that. And the fact that the BBC is casting in a more diverse way, I think that's fantastic as well, But also, there's something that gets me, which is Achilles' story, and spoilers for stuff potentially for the series, but literally thousands of years old, guys. Achilles' story is about a man who is doomed to die, who goes to Troy to win honour and glory while he is still alive, and to gain respect, because he knows his life is short. And he loses the most important person to him, and then suddenly that doesn't matter. He is, he's never going to see his father again. He's never going to see in some texts, his son again. He's just going to die. And then when he gets to the Odyssey, he's a ghost. And he says he would rather be a beggar among the living than a king among the dead. So everything that he fought for, his honour, his glory, is for naught. And that's heartbreaking. And if you only care about that because you think he was a white guy, then have a look at yourself and where your priorities are and where your humanity is, because come on. But yeah, that's what I think about that. So again, stand thing, it's a good thing. And yeah, if you guys have any issues, my channel is really tiny, and I'm not having racist stuff in my comments, so be warned on that. How, take that as you will, but just be warned on that one. It's my tiny little patch of YouTube. I'm not having that on my channel. So anyway, moving on to the brunt of the episode. With the Greeks, the biggest thing that this episode deals with the Greeks is Iphigenia at Aulis. The Greeks are stuck at Aulis, the point where it's not actually called Aulis in the episode, I don't think, but they're stuck. The winds won't let them sail for Troy because they've offended Artemis. They've offended Artemis, and they won't let her, and she won't let them sail. And to be able to go to be able to quiet the winds, one of their priests, a priest called Calchas, although he's not named in the episode, I don't think, but I hope he's Calchas because of the issues coming up later. Iphigenia, Agamemnon's daughter, must be sacrificed. And the sacrifice of Iphigenia is a really, really important thing in classical literature. It has long-standing effects in many different texts, and it's just a really important thing, and I was really worried how they were going to handle it, because it's the sacrifice of a child, a human sacrifice, the question of what is worth it for honour, what is worth it to get to Troy. Lots of people say that when Paris took Helen, that he did not just insult Menelaus, he insulted the whole of Greece. So there's an insult there that needs to be paid back. Agamemnon is, even though the insult was against Menelaus, Agamemnon is the de facto leader of the Greeks. And I will pop up here the actor's name. But I think he did a really good job of Agamemnon as the sort of the leader, as the presence that is not keeping the Greeks together, but he's the one who demands they be there. And then his reaction to being told that his daughter must die is heartbreaking. You know, at first he says he won't do it, and then Odysseus is there, and I'll get to Odysseus again later on. He says, well, they have to. The Greeks are there, you know, they'll be, you can't just send them all away. You know, Menelaus is insisting that his grievance be paid. You know, Agamemnon says, oh, he'll kill himself. Odysseus points out that then the Greeks will lose a leader. It's, you know, he's stuck in a situation. He demands that they try and find a different solution, but they don't and they can't. So they get Iphigenia and Clytemnestra. I don't know if Clytemnestra is named in this episode, but they get them there under the pretense that Iphigenia will marry Achilles and that their wedding will bless the voyage to Troy. And obviously Iphigenia is sacrificed. And there are a lot of different texts that deal with the sacrifice of Iphigenia. I've seen criticism of I've seen some criticism of the episode, which has, in the end, spoilers the episode, Iphigenia, she doesn't accept it, but she stops struggling when she realises what her father is going to do, and she lets him kill her. And I've seen some criticism, but using the text Agamemnon, that they should have portrayed it like how it is described in Agamemnon, where she is tied down. My translation says like a kid, like a goat kid, you know, her yellow dress, and she is struggling and tied down, and that, you know, there's the horror there of an unwilling victim. But the way they did it reminded me more of the text Iphigenia at Aulis, which is the last extant text we have of Euripides, where Iphigenia she doesn't accept that she will be sacrificed, but she doesn't struggle, she goes to it, you know, she is sacrificed without struggle. So obviously the writers were going more with Iphigenia at Aulis, and not, so that's Euripides, and not Aeschylus' Agamemnon. And then, so that's a thing which I find where people are gonna have trouble with this series, which is they're gonna be attached to a particular text, and then either they haven't read the other texts, or they, you know, because there are so many of them that there's too many texts about Troy to, you know, to have this standard of, oh well, this is accurate and this isn't, because like in this case there's two different versions in two different texts, and they're both as equally valid as each other. I mean, again, comment down below if there's anything that, you know, you guys would think that they should have gone with more of the Aeschylus version, because sometimes different versions might work better in a certain narrative. I think there's more tragedy in a little girl accepting that she is going to die, and accepting that her father is going to kill her when she's small. Like, literally guys, I ugly cried in this episode. That's not saying much, because I ugly cry in like a lot of things. Like, it's not a standard of how emotive a thing actually is when I cry in it, because I cry in everything, including classics all the time. Like reading a play, I'll be like, no, so whatever. So it's not particularly a standard of thing, but this episode made me cry so hard because Iphigenia is small and she doesn't want to leave her mother, and her father doesn't want to kill her, but he has to, you know, by ancient Greek male standards he has to. And then and like Clytemnestra cries and screams. Oh, very emotive scene. And genuinely I think I think in the end you know, Iphigenia's not acceptance, but just she doesn't want to be fighting in her last moments. I think that's awful and very emotive, and I think the writers knew how important this scene was for the whole of the Trojan myth, because ultimately this scene is why Agamemnon dies, and this is why he never really returns home to Argos and to Mycenae, and you know, it's very emotive. So I think that the writers knew how important it was and they paid it respect with how they did it. I think they respected the text. They went with one particular text, which is Iphigenia at Aulis, rather than others, but for the most part, I'll get into it a bit more when I talk about Achilles' role in the episode, but for the most part I think they paid it a lot of respect and they cared, which to me is what is important when it comes to adapting ancient material. So yeah, that's Iphigenia at Aulis. It was heartbreaking, which is a good thing for this show. I think it was hard to watch, and it should have been. So yeah, moving on to Odysseus. He plays a bit of a role in this. Odysseus, I have a bit of history with Odysseus. I did my undergraduate dissertation on Odysseus, Odysseus in pop culture specifically, which, man, this would be a fun one. And Odysseus is played by this actor up here, and he is, I'm pretty sure the only cast, although I'm not sure it's the only reason, but I'm sure there's a casting gag in there with he plays Benjen Stark, who is obviously Sean Bean's brother in Game of Thrones, and Sean Bean played Odysseus in Troy, and I don't know why Ithaca is the north. But alright, that's a thing. Not going to spend too much time on that one. And he's good as Odysseus. He is cunning and he is smooth-tongued, and he tries to talk his way into situations and talk his way out of situations. And the first time we meet him is a scene where he is feigning madness to get out of the Trojan War. He's, Diomedes turns up, which actually in the text which this is based on, well, one of the texts it's based on, which is Apollodorus. I'll put the exact text up here. And Apollodorus, and he's feigning madness because he doesn't want to go to Troy, and he's sowing, just rambling around, sowing a field, and Diomedes, it's not Diomedes in the text, it's a guy called Pandarus, I think. He pops Odysseus's baby in front of the plough. In the text it's Telemachus, we'll get to that. And he stops the plough, so obviously they think, oh well, he's not that mad, he's still going to war. So he has to leave Penelope and his children. Which again, if there is a text where Odysseus has more than one child at the point of the Trojan War, please pop it down below, because I have no idea if there is. I'm not saying there isn't, but I don't think so. Again, if I'm wrong, pop it down below, because in the text it's the baby Telemachus, so Odysseus' son, but in this Telemachus is like 10 and he has a baby daughter, because he goes to Telemachus, take care of your mother and your sister, and I don't think Odysseus ever had a daughter. Again, I might be wrong, pop it down below, but in Apollodorus it's Telemachus, the baby. It's fine. Just the slight issue if they do the Odyssey then, because either the Trojan War and Odysseus' story isn't going to be 20 years, or it is, and then Telemachus is going to be like 30. Well, Telemachus' role in the Odyssey is more of a coming of age story, as him as like a young man becoming a man, not like a 30-year-old. So I'll see how they handle that. That's not really a complaint, it's just a comment. So yeah, he's smooth-tongued. I liked his role in the embassy to Troy, where he's explaining things, and he ultimately fails like he does in the embassy to Achilles. And he is a part of the embassy to Troy as mentioned in the Odyssey, in the Iliad, I think book 2. So yeah, Odysseus is good. We'll see how he goes. he's the one who figures out that this is not going to be a one-day battle, that they better dig in and dig deep, because they're going to be there for a while, so that's good. Yeah, that's basically that. Other heroes who are involved, you know, we have Diomedes, we have Ajax, see how they play out. I really want to see Diomedes have his Aristeia. I like the Aristeia of Diomedes in the Iliad, but we'll see if that happens, maybe not. The other Greek heroes are there and good. We got Nestor, yay, and I didn't see who, you know, I like Nestor being there. Yeah, they all seem pretty there and correct. We got Thersites, so that's going to be fun. Let's meet the commoner. Thersites, you know, he got in a few digs, you know, and then being promptly told to shut up by Odysseus. So that's a thing that's like the Iliad. Yeah, so Greeks thing very correct. They don't like Menelaus. Well, Agamemnon does get the treatment of conflicted and prevalent leader. Menelaus, no one likes Menelaus, which I find interesting because, you know, there's the line of like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this for a man like him, which is Odysseus talking to the other Greek heroes. There seems to be quite a lot of resentment towards Menelaus in the Greek forces, which isn't a thing in any text as far as I'm aware. In all texts I have read, again, if there is a text where Menelaus is portrayed as sort of a petulant, angry man that no one likes, pop it in the comments below, I'd like to read it. But as far as I've read, Menelaus is treated just, you know, he's called godlike, he's called leader of men, he's treated as pretty much the same as every other Greek hero in terms of, you know, that he's should be there and he's a prevalent leader. The only text that I know he's treated, you know, less than okay and less than honourably is maybe in the satire play Helen, where he's portrayed as a bit dim. But other than that, I think he's, you know, so the fact that they're definitely making him the guy that no one likes in this series is quite interesting. It's definitely a change from the textual base, but we'll see how that plays out. I mean, maybe they thought they needed like more of a direct villain or just a guy that the audience was meant to not like. So we'll see, again, we'll see how that plays out. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about Achilles. In this episode, Achilles didn't have a tremendous amount of things to do, but what he had in this episode was very effective. I mean, in this episode, like I was saying earlier about Iphigenia at Aulis, in that play, Achilles has more of a direct role during the sacrifice of Iphigenia. He doesn't like that Agamemnon's using him as this pawn to get his daughter there, to get Iphigenia there to sacrifice her, so he promises to defend Iphigenia until his sort of Myrmidon fighters go, no, we want to go to Troy, we will kill you if you get in our way, you know, this has got to happen, and he finally accepts it and he just sort of lets it happen. But in this episode he sort of kept away from it. Odysseus orders Xanthias to sort of keep him back there. You know, so to keep him back, so Achilles has no sort of role. We just sort of see him by intent, like one time. He doesn't really get any lines in the scenes at Aulis. But he doesn't really get any lines that much, but he's in the embassy to Troy, and I'll talk more about the Trojan side of that in a minute, but he is there and he's sort of quiet throughout it. He says a few things but not really, and then, you know, when it all goes off and it's not happening, the war's definitely on, he just looks at the Trojan royal family. He's like, we will be back, and he has this scene, he looks at Hector, and oh, that gave me chills. I don't know if anyone who hasn't spent so much time reading about Hector and Achilles and their stuff, like that, to me that's really a thing. But and oh, it just, to me, gave me chills, because Achilles, he is at Troy because he wants war. He wants to win honour and glory through war. He wants to earn his doxa, which is the ancient Greek word for glory in battle. It's the thing. And he's there because he knows, because of his divine heritage and sort of prophecies, that he's going to die young. So he is trying to get as much glory and honour as he can, and fame as he can, while he's fighting, and this war is his way to do that. And it's only until year 9 of the war where he feels that he is being denied that honour and glory through this one chance that he has, that he gets upset and he gets angry, and, you know, the Iliad kicks off. But this is Achilles at the beginning of his war, the beginning of the war. This is him looking forward to earning that honour, and you can see that he likes it. Achilles is a fighter. He likes fighting. He likes, so to see him at the peak and to see him looking at Hector and to know that both of these men will be destroyed by this. That's very effective, and at least for me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Achilles going forward. So going on from Achilles, you see some of the fight scenes. He gets the scene where he throws a javelin, he throws a spear at a man, and he dies because it hits him in sort of the back of the throat. And I've seen some people calling that a bit too gratuitous and it's too blah, but to be honest, that's about right for the level of violence in the Iliad. I mean, no one's eye popped out of their eye socket, so that's not, so you know, it's not that gruesome. If you actually read any of the death scenes in the Iliad, they are quite bloody, and they're quite explicit in how gratuitous the violence is, because it's not meant to be a good thing. So I thought that the battle scenes were actually fairly tame. Mostly it was just through one scene of them charging at each other, so other than Achilles and his spear, you didn't really get any much close-up death, just sort of the aftermath of it. I really liked when they were both, the two armies are assembling for war and clashing, because it both shows that there's such a show of power on both sides, that both sides have their heroes and both, it's an equal force. And the gods wandering through and blessing them, and the fact that the goddesses are taking sides. We didn't see any other gods, we just saw the goddesses involved in the apple spat, and Zeus, who the actor plays Zeus is really good. That man exudes like a, not like a quiet power, but like a, I am Zeus, I am a god, I am the all, you know, that's, he exudes such power, and I'm really interested to see how they do him in other episodes. I am going to wonder if we do see Olympus, and if we see the other gods taking sides, the more the war goes on. But the more and more I see it, the more I'm convinced they're going with the Hesiod version, which is that Zeus wants this war to get rid of all of these heroes, great heroes that the goddesses go about blessing, to, you know, to cull the pack. That's what I think they're going with. I think they're going with the Hesiod version on that one. Yeah, it was really good. Got a Sarpedon mention. I wonder if he'll be an actual character. I like Sarpedon, son of Zeus. I wish, slight nitpick, which I won't introduce in my nitpick at the end, but I wish that when Aphrodite was blessing the Trojan forces, she said, "my son Aeneas," to really get that across, but minor nitpick on that one. That was okay. Yeah, so I've talked about the Greeks a lot. I'm going to talk about the Trojans now. Now, in Troy, Helen is being treated as a respected guest because Paris has brought her along. At first they're horrified because they know the insult that they then paid to the Greeks. They think to send her back, but they're respecting Helen's choice to remain at the moment. They're treating her with respect, which is very much like the Iliad. In the Iliad, lots of the Trojans give Paris some stick, because, you know, they blame him for the war, you know, like, you brought Helen back here, but no one ever says anything bad about Helen. Helen is always shown as a very positive light in the Iliad, so that's what they're doing with the Trojan side, with most of the Trojans treating Helen very kindly with a lot of respect. You know, I like the way that Priam and Hecabe are shown as leading together. That's quite nice, that's quite good. Because they are often seen in very, you know, even though Priam is the king, Hecabe is very prominent in the Iliad. Hecabe is a very prominent character throughout the entire Trojan myth, so giving her the sort of power that she needs as queen, especially because this is her not highest point, but, you know, Hecabe has a lot of tragedy in front of her, so I think the way they're showing her with power right now is a really good thing going forward. I think Paris and Helen, I think they're really being shown that this is the consequence of their actions, and that maybe their lust for each other, and they call it love, but it is really lust. I think Aphrodite does have something to do with it, you know, does have these consequences, but, you know, they find passion in each other. Again, that's very much like the Iliad, where they have scenes where they sort of fight, they argue, they're like, oh, we're in the situation, and then they sort of resolve it by just going and having sex. Not quite explicit in the Iliad, but that's basically what happens. So there's that. The The only person who seems to really dislike Helen in this show is Andromache, and I find that really interesting because that makes a lot of sense based on certain classical texts, because Andromache in plays like the Trojan Women and the play Andromache, Andromache does go after Helen. She blames Helen for what happened, and Helen leaving Sparta for the Trojan War and the ultimate fate that, because I think the actor who plays Hector and the actress who plays Andromache really have a lot of chemistry, and I'm not dreading, but I'm looking forward to dreading at the same time their scenes together, because Andromache and Hector are part of the true emotional core of the Iliad, and it doesn't seem like they have their son Astyanax yet, which makes me kind of terrified, because Astyanax is Astyanax is so terrible, and what happens to him is so awful, and I don't want to see this baby being born and then, spoilers, and then dying because of the Trojan War. So that's, we'll see how they handle that, because that's going to make me upset, and well, not upset, it's going to make me emotional, as it should, because it's meant to make you feel emotional. You know, it's a comment on what is lost during war, and don't forget that to an ancient Greek reader, and to the people who are actually consuming the Iliad, consuming the Trojan women, consuming Iphigenia, Aulis, consuming all these things, these ancient texts, that they were very concerned with the emotional fallout of what happens in war. There's a scene in Troy where they're having dinner with Helen, and Priam is going like, oh well, the wine is from these vines outside of the city, best you'll ever find, or as the grapes, they're great, as the olives, they're fantastic. And that just reminded me of the Shield of Achilles, which has people, you know, on vineyards and grapes, you know, and then plays like comedy plays like Peace, which focus so much on the agrarian, because that sort of stuff, peaceful farming life, is what is lost when cities go to war. In ancient texts. So the fact that Priam was pointing this out, you know, you have this feeling of, oh well, all these great farms outside the city walls are going to be decimated, are going to be sacked, because that's what happens in war. So I thought that was quite effective. We'll see how it goes more on that. I do want to see more of Hector. Hector is my favourite character. I liked Aeneas when he turns up, old Alfie Enoch as Aeneas. It made me happy seeing him. He rocks up, he has his troops, he's very confident, he's there ready to fight in aid of Troy. We don't see any really more of the Trojan leaders, like Sarpedon gets a mention, but we don't really see him in the same way as we see the Greek fighters, so I'm wondering if in other episodes they're going to focus more on the Trojan forces. Basically, yeah, I thought it was a really good, very strong second episode. It got me emotionally. A few nitpicks, maybe they should have taken more time to develop the Trojans, the Greeks on both sides, maybe taken more time at Aulis rather than throw this all into one episode, because it is quite packed, and it moves at quite a fast pace, I thought. Also, there is the question of, a lot of this is emotionally I got quite emotionally invested into me, I did, but I'm not sure how much people who are not quite as familiar with the Trojan myth and the Trojan texts as I am. I have a lot of opinions and I have a lot of emotional investment in these characters as already, and the way they're doing it does appeal to me. So, but if you guys have different opinions on how you guys are doing it, either from some other classical opinions, if you don't think they should have based on other texts, then pop it down below. I really want to hear what you guys think on that. Or if you're not as familiar with the classics, pop down what you think, how you think they're doing emotionally. Some people have said that the dialogue is a bit awkward, but to be honest, I find the dialogue as fine as something like the Borgias or the Tudors. I think it's the same sort of standard. I don't think it's that awkward. I'm finding the dialogue okay. But yeah, if you guys have different opinions, I really want you to pop it down below, have a discussion about it. It's, you know, a series which I think you can have quite a lot of discussion about, whether or not you think they should have gone with different texts, or if you think they should be adapting it more or less from the classics. I mean, maybe it's relying too heavily on the classics for an audience which may not be as familiar as some people are. But yeah, so yeah, what are my minor nitpicks now? What are my nitpicks of the episode? My nitpicks are, Nesta didn't say "in my day" once. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, Aeneas not being referred to as Aphrodite's son, I think that would have added a little something. But really, that's, again, just a nitpick. So if you guys have any other thoughts, please pop them down below. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. I will be back next week with episode 3, where I haven't been able to find a trailer for episode 3, so we'll see what's going on then. Okay, bye guys.